"This is our house now, old man. You don't get a vote." My son-in-law said those words directly to my face on Thanksgiving morning, in the kitchen I built with my own hands in 1997, while I stood at the stove stirring gravy I'd been making since 4 in the morning. He said it quietly, almost pleasantly, the way someone announces a fact they consider already settled. I set down the wooden spoon, turned off the burner, and did something that none of them saw coming. Before we go further, please subscribe to Pure Revenge Stories and drop a comment telling us what time it is where you are right now. We love hearing from you. The smell of roasting turkey always takes me back to Carol. My wife passed in 2019 after 31 years of marriage, and every Thanksgiving since, I've stood at this same stove, using her same recipe, pulling the same cast iron roasting pan from the same cabinet where she kept it. The house at 4411 Birchwood Lane in Gresham, Oregon, had been ours together. After she was gone, it became mine alone, paid off completely in 2014. Title clear under my name, Howard James Calloway. I'd been a finish carpenter for 38 years, built custom cabinetry, staircases, mantels for homes all over the Portland metro area. I retired in 2021 at 62, sold Calloway Custom Woodworks to a younger contractor named Pete Hamlin, and settled into a quieter life. Morning coffee on the back porch, woodworking in my shop for pleasure instead of income, chess on Tuesday nights with my neighbor Frank Broderick, who'd practiced real estate law for 4 decades before hanging it up. My daughter Melissa had always been the careful one, methodical, organized, the kind of person who made spreadsheets for grocery lists. She married Derek Simmons in 2018 at a ceremony in the backyard of this very house. Derek worked in commercial real estate development, always talking about deals, always explaining why his next project was the one that would finally change everything. I liked him well enough in the beginning. He had energy. He made Melissa laugh. My grandson Tyler was born in 2009, which made him 15 when all of this began unfolding. Melissa's son from a brief relationship before Derek, and Derek had adopted him legally in 2020. Tyler was quiet and perceptive in the way teenagers can be when they've learned that adults don't always mean what they say. The call came on a Sunday afternoon in March of 2022. I was in my shop, fitting a dovetail joint on a cabinet I was building for myself, when my phone rang. "Dad, we need help. Derek's project fell through. The investors backed out. We're going to lose the apartment." "Come home," I told her. "Stay as long as you need to get back on your feet." They arrived 4 days later in a rented truck. 3 bedrooms, more than enough space. Melissa hugged me in the kitchen and cried into my shoulder the way she hadn't since she was a little girl. Derek shook my hand and told me I was saving their lives. I believed him. The first 6 months were fine. Melissa helped with cooking sometimes. Tyler mowed the lawn without being asked. Derek was working the phones constantly, always chasing the next opportunity, always one meeting away from turning things around. I noticed the shift somewhere around month 7. Small things at first. I came downstairs one morning to find Derek had rearranged the living room furniture without mentioning it to me. When I said I preferred the original arrangement, he laughed in a way that wasn't quite dismissive but wasn't quite respectful either. "Howard, you've had that couch against that wall for 20 years. Trust me, the flow is better this way." I moved the couch back. He moved it again 2 days later. By the end of the first year, I had paid $1,200 in additional monthly utilities, absorbed the full cost of groceries for 4 people instead of 1, and written a personal check for $38,000. When Derek's previous investors threatened legal action over a failed land deal. Melissa had called that one in tears as well. "Dad, they're going to sue him personally. It'll destroy our credit. Please?" I had the money. I'd sold the business for a number that would have surprised most people who knew me, and I lived simply enough that I'd barely touched the proceeds. "I wrote the check the same day," she asked. There were other amounts after that. $2,200 for Tyler's emergency dental surgery when Derek's health insurance lapsed. $4,500 for a security deposit on a car Derek leased in his name. $1,000 here, $800 there. I kept a ledger in my filing cabinet the way I'd always tracked business expenses. 38 years of contracting teaches you that numbers tell the truth even when people don't. Month 14. Derek told me to keep the television down after 9 at night because he had early calls with investors on the East Coast. Month 18. I overheard Melissa on the phone with her college friend, Her voice hushed in the hallway. I know. It's not ideal. We're basically running his house for him at this point. He'd be lost without us here. Running my house for me. I filed that phrase in the same mental cabinet where I stored the furniture rearrangements and the patronizing laughs. And the morning I came down to find Derek had thrown away a set of my old woodworking magazines without asking because he thought the stack looked cluttered. Recent weeks had added new layers. I was asked not to use the main bathroom between 7 and 8 in the morning because Derek had a routine. I found my mail opened on the kitchen counter twice, already sorted into piles Derek had decided were important or not important. One evening I walked into my own living room and Derek glanced up and actually said, without any apparent self-awareness, "Could you give us a few minutes? We're in the middle of something." I went back to my shop and stood at my workbench and thought about what my father used to say. Son, a man who lets someone else define the walls of his own house has already moved out. The doorbell rang at 2 o'clock on Thanksgiving afternoon. I heard Derek's voice booming in the entryway. Host voice, party voice. "Brian, Sandra, get in here. Place looks amazing, right? We've done a lot with it." I was in the kitchen, basting the turkey for the final time. Through the doorway I could see them arriving. Brian worked with Derek at his new venture, whatever the current version of it was. Sandra was his wife, the kind of woman who evaluates a room the moment she enters it. 2 other couples followed, people I'd never met. I stepped into the hallway, drying my hands on a dish towel, and extended my hand toward Brian. "Welcome, I'm Howard." Derek's arm materialized between us, his hand landing on Brian's shoulder, pivoting him toward the living room. "Come see what we've done in here." He glanced back at me once. "That's Melissa's dad. He stays with us, helping out around the house. I stood in my own hallway holding my dish towel while Derek led his guests into my living room and began describing his plans to knock out the wall between the kitchen and dining area to open up the space. His hands moved expansively. Brian nodded. Sandra said something about sightlines. Tyler appeared beside me, 16 years old, keeping his voice low. "Grandpa, are you going to let him keep doing this?" I put my hand on his shoulder. "Let's see how dinner goes." I carried the turkey out at 4:30. 22 pounds, bronze, and perfect, the skin crackling exactly the way Carol had taught me to achieve it by rotating the bird twice in the final 40 minutes. Every eye in the room turned. Brian whistled. Sandra leaned forward. "Derek, this is incredible. You really cooked all day?" Derek received this with a modest tilt of his head. "Had to do it right, you know? Thanksgiving's important." I set the platter on the table I'd built myself in 2001 from reclaimed Douglas fir, and I stood in the doorway of my dining room with my empty hands at my sides. Melissa moved to her chair without looking at me. I watched her rearrange a napkin, adjust a water glass, anything to keep her eyes somewhere else. "Everyone find a seat." Derek gestured to the table. I'd set it for 10. 10 places, 10 cloth napkins folded into the peaks Carol had always made. As they settled in, I understood what had happened. The arrangement left no chair at the table for me. A 10th place setting, but no 10th chair. Derek had removed the chair from my end of the table, the head of the table where I had sat for 27 years, and replaced it with a decorative basket of gourds and pine cones. I stood at the edge of my dining room looking at the table I had built, in the house I had built, watching strangers eat the turkey I had been preparing since 4 in the morning. I pulled a chair from against the wall and moved toward the head of the table. The scraping sound on hardwood quieted the room the way a wrong note quiets a concert hall. I reached for my position, the position that was mine by every measure of ownership and effort, and 27 years of sitting in exactly this spot. Derek's hand came down flat on the table, not loud, deliberate. He looked up at me from across the room. "This is our house now, old man. You don't get a vote." He said it quietly. Brian and Sandra exchanged a glance. The other guests studied their plates. Melissa stared at her water glass with the intense focus of someone trying to disappear. Tyler half rose from his chair. Derek's voice sharpened without raising. "Sit down, Tyler. Adults are talking." I stood still for a moment. Long enough for every person in that room to understand that I had heard exactly what was said, and that I was choosing my next movement deliberately. Then I set the chair back against the wall. I walked through the dining room archway, past the cabinetry I'd built for the butler's pantry in 2003, Past the staircase I'd refinished in 2015. Past the framed photographs I'd hung at the measured heights Carol had marked in pencil on the wall. I walked to the front door, put my hand on the knob I'd replaced with a better one in 2018, and opened it. November in Gresham is cold and specific. 42 degrees that afternoon. The smell of rain on concrete. The neighbor's maple stripped down to its gray branches. I turned and faced the dining room from the doorway. Everyone in this house who is not its legal owner needs to leave. You have 5 minutes. Derek, Melissa, take what you can carry tonight and go. This is my house. I have the deed. I have the title. I have 38 years of mortgage payments and maintenance records, and I am the only person in this building with any legal right to be here. Brian laughed first, uncertain, looking at Derek for guidance. Derek stood. He hadn't expected this. I could see the recalibration happening behind his eyes, the confidence cracking at its seams. He laughed as well, the sound of someone performing unconcerned. You're joking. Sit down, Howard. You're embarrassing yourself. But the guests were already reading the room the way guests do when they realize a family situation has just become a situation. Sandra touched Brian's arm. Brian's laugh died. Sandra was already standing, reaching for her coat on the chair back. Brian, I think we should. Derek pointed at her. Nobody's leaving. He's just... Brian put his hand on Derek's shoulder, the brief, solid grip of someone exiting a conversation. We'll call you tomorrow, man. 40 seconds later, they were gone, all 4 of them filing past me in the doorway with murmured apologies and averted eyes, the couples behind them following in a quiet stream. Nobody wanted any part of what this had become. It took 90 seconds for the house to empty down to the 4 of us. Derek remained at the table, both palms flat on the Douglas fir surface. Melissa had finally looked up, but she was looking at him, not at me. Tyler stood against the far wall. You can't just throw us out. Derek's voice had shifted from performance to something raw. We live here. Oregon has tenant protections. We have rights. I walked to the side table in the hallway where I keep my phone charging. Picked it up. Derek watched my thumb move. You're bluffing. His voice had lost conviction the same way a structure loses it when the load-bearing element fails. 911. The call connected on the second ring. I explained the situation to the dispatcher with the same language I'd used my whole career when a job needed to be described precisely. Property address. Nature of the problem. No immediate physical danger. Individuals refusing to vacate after being asked. Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. I ended the call and stood at the open door, with November coming in cold and clean around me. Melissa screamed. Not words at first, pure panic, and then words came. Dad, what are you doing? This is us. This is family. Tyler started crying in the corner, quiet and controlled, trying to take up as little space as possible. Derek moved around the table toward me. Officers are going to laugh at you. We've lived here 2.5 years. Squatters' rights. Adverse possession requires 10 years in Oregon, I told him. You've been here 30 months. He stopped. The red and blue lights came through the front windows at 9 minutes, not 12. 2 deputies. Reed, a solid man in his mid-40s. Vasquez, a woman in her 30s who had the look of someone who had sorted out 100 of these before breakfast. I had the deed ready in a manila folder I'd retrieved from my filing cabinet while the phone was still ringing. Title document, property tax records, utility accounts, all in my name. Reed studied them for 2 full minutes. There's no lease agreement? No rental receipts? No lease. They were family staying temporarily as guests. Derek tried. We have common law tenancy. We've contributed to this household for over 2 years. Vasquez's expression did not change. Do you have documentation? Receipts, bank records, showing rent payments. I have the opposite, I said. I have documentation showing every expense in this house has been paid exclusively by me for 30 months. Reed looked at Derek. You need to take what you can carry tonight and vacate the premises. You can arrange to collect remaining belongings through civil process. Melissa came to me then, close enough that I could see her mascara tracking down her face. Dad, please. It's Thanksgiving. We have nowhere to go tonight. I looked at my daughter. My chest pulled hard toward her. I felt it like a physical thing. I've been nowhere in my own home for 2.5 years, I said. Tonight that changes. They packed in 11 minutes. Derek moved fast and angry, throwing things into bags without folding them. Melissa moved slowly, in a state of shock that seemed genuine. Tyler came downstairs last with one backpack and stopped in front of me. Grandpa, I'm sorry. I tried to tell her it was going wrong. I put both hands on his shoulders. You have nothing to answer for. None of this is yours to carry. Is it going to be okay? Eventually. Yes. They filed past me. Derek stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and turned back, his face the color of the brick I'd laid on this walkway in 2006. I'll make sure you regret this. Reed stepped forward from behind me before I could respond. Keep moving, sir. I watched them reach Derek's truck at the curb, watched the doors close, watched the taillights pull away into the November dark. Then I went inside, closed the door, and stood in the silence of my house. I didn't sleep well, not from guilt exactly, more from the strangeness of stillness after 30 months of noise. No footsteps above the ceiling, no television through the wall at 11 at night, no Derek's voice in the kitchen running his version of events to someone on the phone. I woke at 5 and walked through every room at dawn, the way you walk through a property after the last crew has finished and left, looking for what's there and what isn't. Tyler's desk in the guest room, gone. Melissa's reading chair in the corner of the second bedroom, gone. Derek's briefcase collection along the hallway, gone. The dining room table still held the ruins of Thanksgiving, the untouched plates, the turkey, cold and abandoned on its platter. I stood looking at it for a while. At 8 o'clock I called Frank Broderick. He came over in 20 minutes carrying 2 cups of coffee from the cart on Burnside, which is Frank's version of emergency preparedness. We sat on the back porch, in the cold. I saw the squad car, he said. I told him everything, starting with March of 2022 and ending with the taillights at the curb. He didn't interrupt. He had the lawyer's habit of letting a full account finish before responding. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment. Howard, legally, you did it correctly. Deed holder, no lease, no documented rent. Guests asked to leave. I pulled out my ledger. He paged through it slowly. His eyebrows moved. This is thorough. 38 years of contracting. You document or you don't get paid. He stopped at the check register section. $38,000 for the investor dispute. He looked up. Yes. $2,200 for the boys' dental work. Yes. He kept reading. He reached the end. He set it down on the porch table. Howard. Total here is close to $60,000. $62,400 documented, plus 30 months of absorbed living expenses. I was feeding 4 people on my grocery budget. He shook his head slowly. They're going to come at you. Oregon tenant law is broad. Derek's the type who will find a lawyer willing to take a contingency on a long shot. I know. Get someone good now. Don't wait for them to file first. He gave me a name. Patricia Nguyen, Portland, 20 years in property and tenancy law. Doesn't lose. I changed all 4 exterior locks that afternoon. Deadbolts, not rekeyed, full replacement hardware. The locksmith, a young woman named Carla, took 40 minutes on all 3 doors. I watched each old lock come off and each new one go on and felt something I hadn't felt in 30 months. This is mine. All of it. Every inch. Melissa called at noon the next day. They'd slept in Derek's truck in the parking lot of a Safeway on Division Street. I felt the pull of that. I'm not made of something that doesn't feel a daughter's distress. But then I heard Derek's voice from behind her in the background, his tone low and coaching, and I understood the call for what it was. I told her what I'd been working on. She and Tyler were always welcome to contact me. Derek was not. She needed to make a decision about what that meant. She hung up. I called Patricia Nguyen the following morning and drove downtown to her office on the 11th floor of a building on SW Broadway, which is the kind of address that tells you a lawyer doesn't need to try too hard to impress you. She reviewed my documentation for 45 minutes before she said anything. This is unusually complete, she said. I nodded. Any emails or texts acknowledging the living arrangement is temporary? I pulled out printed email exchanges. One from Melissa in August 2022. Thanks again for letting us use the house while we sort things out, Dad. A text from Derek in November 2022. Once the Hillsborough project closes, we'll get out of your hair. Promise. Patricia read them twice. Your hair. She looked up. He acknowledged it wasn't his house in writing. He did. She leaned back. They'll file a tenancy claim. Derek has the ego for it and a desperation motive. I'll have a response package ready before they serve you. We shook hands on a retainer. I drove home on Highway 26 with the feeling of someone who had made the right preparation at the right time. The process server came on a Tuesday in January, 6 weeks after Thanksgiving. Derek Sterling Simmons versus Howard James Calloway claimed constructive tenancy through continuous occupancy and contribution to household upkeep, seeking declaratory judgment of tenancy rights and damages. I called Patricia that afternoon, and she already knew. The filing had flagged in her system. Their attorney is Ray Teller, she said. He takes long-shot cases on contingency when he's between better work. He's not incompetent, but he doesn't prep well. I went to see Frank that evening. We sat in his study with the filing spread across his coffee table. They're claiming improvements to the property, Frank noted. What did Derek actually do in that house? I thought about it. He painted the downstairs bathroom without being asked, which I hadn't wanted done, and he used the wrong finish, so I had to repaint it myself. He attempted to fix a loose hinge on the back gate and made it worse. Frank looked at me over his reading glasses. That's it? In 2.5 years? Yes. He set the papers down and smiled for the first time. Howard, this is going to be over very fast. The preliminary hearing was held in late February at the Multnomah County Courthouse on SW 4th. Judge Thomas Abernethy, 60-something, with the permanent expression of someone who has seen this particular version of foolishness before. I sat with Patricia. Derek and Melissa sat on the other side with Ray Teller, who arrived with a briefcase that looked optimistic given the circumstances. Derek was wearing a suit that was either borrowed or bought on credit. Melissa looked hollowed out, thinner than I'd seen her. She didn't look at me. Judge Abernethy reviewed the filings for 8 minutes before he spoke. Mr. Teller, your clients have resided at the property for approximately 30 months. Oregon adverse possession requires 10 years of continuous, hostile, open, and notorious possession. Your clients were explicitly invited guests with no claim of independent ownership. On what grounds is this claim proceeding? Teller stood. Your Honor, we contend that my clients established constructive tenancy through consistent contribution to household maintenance and operations. The judge looked at him. Contribution documented how? We have testimony from my clients regarding ongoing maintenance activities. Patricia stood. Your Honor, the plaintiff has submitted a comprehensive financial record demonstrating that every documented household expense for the full 30-month period was paid exclusively by my client, the titled homeowner. Additionally, I have email and text evidence in which both defendants explicitly acknowledge the property as belonging to my client. She connected to the courtroom display. Melissa's August 2022 email appeared on screen. Derek's November 2022 text appeared beneath it. Your house? Your hair? Judge Abernethy read them twice. He removed his glasses. Motion to dismiss is granted. There is no colorable tenancy claim here. The property records are unambiguous. The written communications by the defendants are unambiguous. Mr. Teller, I will note for the record that this filing appears to have been brought without adequate legal foundation, and I would encourage more careful case assessment in the future. The hearing had taken 11 minutes. In the corridor, Derek looked at me with the face of someone who has been certain they were right for so long that losing doesn't feel real yet. This isn't over. I walked past him toward the elevator. It was over. For him, it wasn't yet. But that was a different matter. The civil recovery complaint had been ready since January. Patricia had prepared it. $62,000 in documented expenses. But I hadn't filed it. Not yet. I'd learned something in 4 decades of building things. The timing of when you set a piece matters as much as whether you set it at all. I also had a phone call to make first. His name was Carl Whitmore. I'd come across it while pulling public records on Derek's old company filings, looking for context on the Hillsborough project that had supposedly collapsed. Carl had been a 40% partner in Simmons Whitmore Development LLC before the company dissolved in 2021. I found his number through a mutual contact in the Portland construction community. We met at a diner in Beaverton. Carl was 53, weathered around the eyes, with the look of someone who'd done the math on a bad situation and still wasn't over it. I told him who I was. His response was immediate. You're the father-in-law. How much did he take you for? I told him. He shook his head. He told me his version. Simmons Whitmore had handled commercial renovation projects in Washington County from 2018 to 2021. In 2020, a fire damaged one of their renovation sites, a former retail space they were converting to office use. The insurance claim had been filed for $112,000, covering structural damage and business interruption. Actual repair costs had come in at $41,000. Derek had kept the difference. Carl had confronted him. Derek had dissolved the company within 60 days and moved on to the next thing. Carl had consulted a lawyer about fraud charges, but the legal cost versus likely recovery hadn't made it worth pursuing. He'd kept the documentation out of what he described as spite, and the vague hope that one day it might be useful. Is it still useful? He looked at me steadily. What do you have in mind? I gave him Patricia's office address. The package arrived 8 business days later. Original insurance claim documents, itemized repair invoices from the contractor of record, internal emails between Derek and the insurance adjuster. $71,000 in excess claim proceeds with Derek's name on the receiving account. Patricia reviewed it for 2 days. Howard, this is a referral to the Oregon Insurance Fraud Unit and potentially to the Multnomah County DA's office. Are you prepared for what that means? He defrauded an insurance company for $71,000. He took $62,000 from me. He told me this is his house. Yes, I'm prepared. She submitted the package as a concerned third party with supporting documentation. The Oregon Insurance Fraud Unit opened a formal investigation the following month. Case number on record. Derek would be contacted for an interview. Potential criminal referral pending review. I was sitting in my shop refinishing a side table I'd been putting off for 2 years when Frank called to tell me. You're enjoying this, Frank said. I'm restoring a piece of furniture I've been meaning to get back to for a long time, I told him. I'm finding it satisfying. He laughed. I'd heard that kind of satisfaction in a lawyer's voice before. You sound exactly like my clients who win. The weeks that followed moved at the pace of institutional processes, which is to say slowly, but with inevitability. Through Frank's network, I learned that Derek's new development venture, whatever it had been called, had gone quiet. The insurance investigation was not a secret in Portland's commercial real estate community, which is smaller than it appears. Nobody wants exposure on their projects through association with an active fraud inquiry. His income, already unclear, evaporated. Tyler texted me in March. Grandpa, can I come over after school on Thursday? I need to talk to someone. I said yes. He came on Thursday and we sat in the shop while I worked the side table. He was quieter than I'd ever seen him, and this was a quiet kid by nature. They fight every night, he said, about money, about you, about the investigation. Mom found out about the insurance thing. What did she say? She said she didn't know. I believe her because she was actually shocked. She screamed at him. She said you'd been right about everything and he'd lied to her from the beginning. He said you should have helped more. She said you helped more than anyone could have been expected to, and he'd thrown it in your face. First time, I thought. First time she said it that way. Tyler leaned against the workbench. Is Mom going to be okay? I thought about how to answer that honestly. She's going to have to decide some things, I said. But she's stronger than she's been acting. I think she'll find that out. Melissa called me in April for the first time since December. Her voice was flat with exhaustion, but steadier than I'd expected. Dad, I filed for divorce. I didn't say anything for a moment. I should have done it a year ago, she said. I knew what he was. I kept telling myself it was the circumstances, the pressure, the money stress. I let him do what he did to you because I was scared of losing him, and I lost you instead. And that was a worse trade than I understood until I was standing in it. I let her talk. I didn't fill the silence. I'm not calling to ask you to take it back, she said. The lawsuit, the filing, whatever is happening with the investigation. I know that all has to happen. I'm calling because Tyler needs his grandfather and because I need you to know that I understand what I did. The divorce was finalized in June. Derek took his truck, which had a loan balance exceeding its value. Melissa kept her car. They split the credit card balances that had accumulated $13,000 each. The IRS had filed a lien against Derek for unreported business income from 2020, amounts still being determined. Neither of them had anything. Bankruptcy petitions followed in July for both. I filed the civil recovery complaint the morning I learned the bankruptcy petitions had been entered, $62,000 against both jointly. Patricia had it ready. It took her 4 minutes to submit. Melissa called when she was served. Her voice was steady. How much? 62,400. Fully documented. I know. I expected it. I deserve it. What are the terms? We'll let the court set them, I said. But I'll tell you now. I'm not looking to destroy you. I'm looking for accountability. There was a long silence. Then, that's fair. That's actually fair. The hearing was scheduled for September in Multnomah County Civil Court, the same building where the first case had lasted 11 minutes. I dressed carefully that morning. A navy sport coat I'd bought the day I signed the sale papers on Callaway Custom Woodworks. The watch Carol had given me for our 25th anniversary. My father's belt buckle, plain brass, worn smooth. Frank drove. We didn't talk much on the way in. He'd been through enough courthouse mornings to know that some of them don't need narration. Melissa was already in the corridor when we arrived, sitting alone on a bench, wearing clothes from her retail job. She'd started working at a hardware store in Northeast Portland, which I thought was either coincidental or intentional. She stood when she saw me. Derek wasn't there. His attorney had filed a response, but Derek himself was absent, which Patricia told me later was typical for people who can't stand the reality of what they've created. Judge Abernethy again. He recognized the parties with what I interpreted as tired amusement. We meet again, Mr. Callaway, Miss Simmons. I understand we have a civil recovery claim today. Patricia presented the documentation methodically. Bank statements, canceled checks, the ledger entries, the email chain, the same materials that had existed all along, now assembled for a different purpose. The opposing attorney, a different one this time, offered what he could. His client had no assets. His client was in bankruptcy proceedings. His client had acted in good faith as a family member assisting an elderly relative. Patricia stood. Mr. Callaway is 64 years old, Your Honor. He built his own business over 38 years. He is not a ward requiring assistance. He was the owner and financial provider of the household in question, and the documentation shows clearly that both defendants received $62,000 in direct financial support over 30 months, in addition to full living expenses, and promised repayment on multiple occasions in writing. She pulled up Derek's November 2022 text on the courtroom display. Once the Hillsborough project closes, we'll get out of your hair. Promise. We'll get out of your hair. Judge Abernethy read it. Then he read the email below it. Then he looked at me for a moment before looking at the documents again. I've reviewed the supporting materials submitted, he said. The claim is documented and credible. The defendants have no substantive counterclaim. Judgment for plaintiff in the amount of $62,400. He looked at Melissa. Miss Simmons, you're in bankruptcy proceedings. Your payment capacity is severely limited at this time. I'm setting a payment plan of $300 monthly, beginning 60 days from today. Duration approximately 17 years, adjusted if your circumstances change materially. Mr. Simmons's obligation remains joint and several. If he fails to pay his portion, you remain liable for the full amount. Melissa nodded. Her jaw was set. Yes, Your Honor. The criminal investigation into Derek's insurance fraud was still active as of that morning. Patricia had been informed that a referral to the DA's office was probable. I didn't bring that up in court. It didn't need to be said. In the corridor, Melissa approached me alone. No attorney buffer, no Tyler as mediator, just my daughter. Dad. I waited. I know this isn't the end of what I have to do to fix this. She said it directly, not performing it. The 17 years, the payments, whatever happens with Derek's legal situation, all of it. I know that's the shape of it now. I chose this by what I did and what I didn't do. I was quiet for a moment. I know what I owe you, she said. Not just the money. I forgive you, I told her. I mean that. But you're right that forgiving and forgetting are two different things. And trust doesn't get rebuilt in a courthouse corridor. It gets rebuilt over time and over actions. You make your payments. You live your life. And when Tyler wants to come see me, which he does, that's between me and him, not subject to Derek's opinion anymore. Her eyes filled. She blinked it back. Is there a chance, someday? There's always a chance, Melissa. That's why it's called chance and not certainty. She nodded once, then walked toward the elevator without looking back. Frank and I drove home on the Banfield. The October light was doing what it does in Oregon in fall, that specific gold that comes between the rain systems when the air is clean and the trees along the freeway are running through every color they have before letting go. "Did you get what you set out to get?" Frank asked. I thought about it. "I got my house back," I said. "My name on the door, and nobody telling me when I can use my own bathroom. I got accountability, which is different from satisfaction but lasts longer. And I found out that my daughter has more in her than she showed me for 2.5 years. And Derek." I watched the firs going past on the hill above the highway. "Derek will spend the next several years explaining himself to lawyers and government agencies. That's not something I arranged. That's something he arranged when he decided that other people's property was his to take." Frank was quiet for a mile. "What about you, Howard? What now?" "I've got a cabinet commission I took on last month. First paid work since I sold the business. Young couple in Lake Oswego. They want a built-in library wall, floor to ceiling. Beautiful project." "You're going back to work?" "One project. For the pleasure of it. To remind myself what it feels like to build something carefully and have it come out right." He nodded. He understood that. Tyler came over the following Saturday. He helped me move lumber in the shop and ate 3 of the sandwiches I made for lunch and asked me to teach him basic joinery, which I'd been offering for years. We worked side by side at the bench for 4 hours. He was methodical, careful, asked before he cut. He'll be fine, I thought. Whatever his parents put him through, this kid will be fine. That evening I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee and listened to Gresham doing what it does on an autumn Saturday. Lawnmowers 2 houses down, somebody's kids in the cul-de-sac, a dog making its opinion known about something in the distance. The house was mine. The silence was mine. The porch I'd rebuilt in 2012, the yard where Melissa had grown up, the shop where I'd spent 38 years building things meant to last. All mine. I'd let someone move in and slowly convince me I was a guest in my own life. The process had been so gradual that I'd almost accepted it as the new geography, as just how things were now. The difference between a home and a house, I thought, is whether you're living in it or just occupying it. I was living in mine again. If this story meant something to you, please leave a like and subscribe to Pure Revenge Stories. Drop a comment and tell us where you're listening from today. Click on the next story when you're ready. We'll be here